Well, thank you guys for joining me here. I'm going to be doing a quick trapping Q&A video. You guys have been sending us some messages on Instagram and commenting on some of the videos from YouTube and asking some great questions, and figured I'd address some of those. I am by no means an expert coyote trapper. I think this is my 4th or 5th year trapping, and still have a lot to learn. I'm constantly learning. There was something today that popped up that I was like, man, I can't believe I never thought of that. So I'm just going to answer some of those questions tonight, and hope you guys can gain some information from this, or maybe help you out on the trap line. So I got some of the coyotes from this year hanging behind me here. I usually flush them out in my barn and board them, and then I'll hang them here to dry until I take them to the tannery. So if you hear any weird sounds or noises, it's probably my furnace kicking on or something like that. So again, just super laid back, kind of chill video here, and hope you guys enjoy it. So obviously one of the main questions I think probably most trappers get is, what kind of traps do you use? So I currently run the Minnesota brand 550s, offset jaw, 4-coil spring. I haven't had really any big issues with them. I know a lot of guys run them, but I do think there are better traps out there specifically for catching coyotes. I've heard a lot of really good things about the Canine Extremes. Looking to maybe buy some of those for this upcoming season, but right now I'm exclusively running the MB 550s. Pretty durable trap. Like I said, haven't had a whole lot of issues. Every once in a while your dog mechanism on the trap will bend or break, and you'll have to repair or replace those. I have had a couple of the traps run over by large farm equipment, and they do get bent up a little bit, but again, for the purpose that they're supposed to serve, they're a pretty good trap for catching canines. So next question I got here is, what bait and lure do I use? This is a tough question because I'll use whatever. I mean, if somebody recommends something, I'll try it. I don't have like a certain bait and lure that I use exclusively, and as a matter of fact, I think it's better if you don't. I personally like to mix it up on farms. I'll use 2, 3, 4 different lures on different sets and just try things out. Having said that, I have had consistent success when I use Dunlap's Hellfire lure. It's like a pasty long call lure. Smells like skunk, and I've had great success using that, paired with either Hoosier Trapping Supplies Top Dog Predator bait or Blackie's 3-meat blend. I use both of those all the time and have had great success, like I said, pairing those together with either coyote or fox urine. I typically run dirt hole sets, usually trench sets or dirt hole sets, and I'll throw that bait in the hole with the lure kind of just mixed in on the backing, and then just a dash of either coyote or fox urine, and that's it. I don't think you need a lot. I don't glob a lot. A lot of times, you know, just the standard bottles or containers of bait will last me as long as I trap in a season here, which is just, you know, a month or two. But again, I'll use whatever. I've even, you know, shot a squirrel hunting and then used the guts from that, or some old deer meat that was left in the fridge and used that. I don't think the bait is as big or crucial of a deal as you may think. I could be wrong though also. I think the lure plays a little bit more of a factor, that intrigue factor to really draw them to the set, and then the bait, you know, is what they're ultimately going to be trying to get to in that hole. So I think it can really be whatever. Once you get them to commit there, I don't know that the bait is that important. So don't want to rant there, but yeah, I'll use whatever. If I had to pick one right now though, I would use the Dunlap Hellfire lure, and I would use probably Top Dog Predator bait from Hoosier Trap Supply. So where do you shoot them after you catch them? So I guess that's a great topic to get into. I am dispatching all of the coyotes that I catch. Yes, from like the predator control or management aspect of things, but also I plan on taking all these pelts and having them tan this year, and then I'm gonna sell them as like wall hangers to buddies or to guys that hang in their trophy rooms. The fur market just isn't what it once was, and I don't know that it ever will be again. So there's not a whole lot as far as monetary reward to sell them to the fur market. So I'm going to sell them as more of like a novelty. And I hang on to some of them too. I don't know if you can see them behind me, but I got a couple blonde ones that I caught this year. If you follow our Instagram and YouTube and stuff, you probably saw them. But I'm going to hang on to those for me just because I think they're cool. So I shoot them in the head. This video will probably get flagged now for me saying that, but want to be transparent. Some guys will shoot them in the lungs like you would a deer. I personally want it to be really quick. Coyotes do hemorrhage quite a bit, so the skinning process can be pretty messy, pretty nasty once you get to that head part. I think that's why a lot of guys shoot them in the lungs. But again, I want it to be quick for the animal. So one shot. I use a Heritage Model 22 handgun, and I basically go to the edge of the catch circle. They're not going to be able to get you from there, and most of the time they're not that aggressive anyway. So. And then dispatch them right there. So, what do you do with them after you trap them? So I guess I kind of already answered that one, but after I trap them, I throw them in the back of my truck, I bring them home, and I hang them. I have a gambrel system that I actually just hook onto the back of my truck. We usually skin them in my dad's barn, actually. He's got a nice barn, and we get them skinned out in there. He helps me skin every single one of them. From there, after I skin them, I bring them to my house and I flesh them in my barn, and then I'll board them up and then dry them out like you see here. I'll let them sit first side in on the boards for like anywhere from 12 to 18 hours, and then I'll flip them first side in on the board for like 3 days, and then after 3 days I'll take them off the boards and just hang them on my hangers until the end of the season. So that is what I do with them after I trap them. How many sets do you run? So this varies a little bit depending on the time of year. I got a pretty busy schedule. I work full time. I coach wrestling at our local school. I dabble in a lot of other things. I still like to deer hunt and all that stuff. So I usually don't start trapping till like mid-December, which one of these years I really want to start like late October, early November, but I'm usually deer hunting. So I start, like I said, about mid-December, and then I'll run right about to right now, which is the middle of February. I've pretty much pulled everything. And I'll run anywhere from a dozen to 20 traps max. I don't run any more than about 20, and that's spread out between, I believe, like 6 farms. Every once in a while I'll pick up like what I call like a satellite farm, where maybe like a buddy calls me and says, hey, I got them on trail camera, can you set some out here? But it's not a whole lot of ground. It's like a 10-mile loop where I live here. It's a pretty quick, pretty easy loop. I strategically do that so I can check them on my way to work. So anywhere from 12 to 20 traps on like 5 to 7 properties, we'll call it. I know I got a little off on the topic there, but I felt like that was important to include. So, truth about hurting their foot or not. Okay, so this question comes in from time to time about if the trap actually like hurts the animal's foot or not. When I first got into trapping, it seemed like the big thing was like, oh, this doesn't hurt the animal, doesn't hurt the animal, doesn't hurt the animal. It doesn't hurt them, but it also isn't pleasant. I've stuck my hand in a trap before, and yeah, it doesn't break your hand or anything like that, but it surely doesn't feel good. And if we're being fully transparent, we're catching them at night in cold weather, so like having their foot trapped in a trap, it's not, it's not sunshine and rainbows, but it does not hurt them. It won't break any bones or anything like that. That has nothing to do with the offset jaws or anything of that matter. It's just the fact that it's basically a handcuff. They're stepping on the pan, the trap is basically cuffing them into place, and then I have swivels on my chain so they're able to twist and turn. And again, it's not going to hurt them, it's not going to kill them for sure. That's not what kills them. It just kind of holds them into place until I can get there. And like I said, it's not going to kill them, but it doesn't feel great. A lot of times, though, any of the damage caused is by them. Sometimes they'll, again, full transparency, they'll chew on their foot or chew on their toes or whatever. But the trap really isn't causing any damage. How do you catch them in freezing temperatures? So I like this question because I feel like the industry, like other industries, tries to push certain things. when I first started coyote trapping, I was like told by everybody, you need to have wax dirt if you're trapping in freezing conditions. You need to have wax dirt. I have never once run wax dirt ever. And I catch them just fine. This year we had like, I think with the wind chill it was like -20 a few days, and I was catching them no problem. What I use is peat moss. I always use peat moss, but when we get really, really cold freezing conditions, I use table salt and table salt and driveway salt, like ice melt salt, mixed in with my peat moss. So I'll dig my trap bed, I'll line the bottom of the trap bed with the driveway ice melt salt, and then I'll put some more peat moss down, lay my trap in, salt it a little bit with table salt, cover some more peat moss, table salt, peat moss, table salt. And I didn't have any problem catching coyotes in those negative temps. So wax dirt may be better, but if you don't want to spend the money or the time making wax dirt, buying wax dirt, you can get away with peat moss and salt just fine, no problem. Now I've heard guys say that the salt will rush your traps. I don't trap, super long periods of time, so any of those traps that I had covered in salt, I pulled them and I took them immediately to the car wash and I power washed them off to get any of that salt off of there. A little bit of rust isn't going to hurt anything, but if you're worried about that, like I said, just get them out of the ground in a timely fashion and get them washed off. You'll be fine. Let's see here. Do you check traps in the mornings or after work? So Ohio has a 24-hour check law. I don't know about other states, but you have to check them at least once every 24 hours in Ohio. Just because of my work schedule, I like to check them first thing in the morning. This time of year, I'll usually wake up about 7 o'clock. It gets light around 7:30, so by the time I throw my clothes on, brush my teeth, grab something quick to eat, it's starting to peak daylight, and I'll start my rounds. Obviously, days where I don't have anything, it's a really quick loop. Days where I have some catches, it's going to take a little bit more time. I'm going to obviously go and dispatch them. I'm going to reset the trap. Then I got to, take care of hanging the coyote and all that jazz. So I check them in the morning. Now, I did actually just speak to our county game warden this week to confirm that in Ohio, you can monitor your traps with cell cameras. Trail cameras that are obviously sending photos to your phone. You just have to make sure you're able to check them once a day. That gets a little bit iffy in my opinion because, I've had trouble with trail cameras sending pictures, taking pictures, being dead and you don't know they're dead. So I always still like to check them, but you can do that in the state of Ohio. So that's something else. If you're wanting to get into trapping but you don't know if you can check them, it is legal to use your cellular cameras to check them. So something to keep in mind. How do you make budget-friendly alternative to wax dirt? So that I think I already answered with the how do you trap in freezing conditions. I just go buy some table salt and then some rock ice melt driveway salt and mix that in with the peat moss. Good sets for lots of rain. Man, this is a tough question. I'm still learning when it comes to that. Obviously, if you dig a trap bed out super deep and we get a ton of rain, like a monsoon downpour rain, it's just, your trap bed's going to fill up. The peat moss does a really good job of like repelling the water. If we just get a little bit of rain, I can just basically dust off that top layer of soggy peat moss and then put dry over top, and it's perfectly normal, perfectly fine. But if we get like a big dump in of rain, I pretty much remake everything. A coyote's not going to come and step its foot down in a big pool of water. At least I haven't had success with that. So staying away from like the trench sets that are really going to fill up with water. And the only other thing I would say that would maybe help is I have used like the pipe sets. Mark Zager's kind of coined the pipe dream set. It's basically some PVC pipe in the ground with a hole drilled through the bottom of it, and then you put your bait and your lure in there, so if we get rain, water can kind of drain out of that hole that you screwed in the bottom. I have used that, and I have caught coyotes doing that. I've messed around a little bit with like the hay sets and the straw sets. I like that if I know we're going to get a bunch of rain. Obviously, in Ohio and a lot of these other states, they're wrong half the time, but if I know like we got rain for the next week in the forecast, I'll make my normal dirt hole set and then I'll take straw or hay and basically cover my trap with that just to kind of help hide some of the puddles or some of the rain. And then if at all possible, making your sets on like a high point. You know, if you make a set in some terrace waterway that just holds a bunch of water, and then we get a bunch of rain, like, and you're going to be flooded out, you might as well not even set it. So if you can, you know, find a high spot, that'd be even better. What do you do when coyotes don't commit? So also learning through this as we speak. It's funny this question popped up because right now I'm trapping a farm for a family friend, basically, that he's got a bunch of cell cameras out, and man, these suckers are, I don't know if they're scared of the trail cameras or something going on with the traps, but I have not caught one yet, and they've come by and kind of like looked at the trap and then took off running. So the best thing I've found, though, if you have a smart coyote or one that doesn't seem to want to commit, is either set another trap, like just on the fringe of where your original set is, or like if you made a catch and there's a catch circle, maybe adding a set on the outside of that catch circle in case they get a little bit wary. I'm gonna start messing with snares as well. Like this property in particular is the reason why. It's a timber property. I'm not sure. Usually I like to trap out in fields, but this is a property that's I had to trap in the timber basically. And like I said, just haven't been having luck. So I know there's some real defined trails. I'm gonna try to set some snares and avoid the possibility of them being shy from a set because of the scent or the looks or whatever, and just catch them in a snare. So bedding traps, tips and techniques. So this one, I plan to make a video about this because it'd be easier to show than to tell. But my coyote trapping changed completely when I learned how to properly bed a trap. And basically what I do, if you can visualize this at all, is I cut a really small square trap bed, basically the size of the trap, if not a little bit smaller. I don't want a big, huge, deep bowl like a lot of people talk about. I cut basically just a square trap bed, and then I lay the trap in and get like a impression in the ground where the levers are. I'll pull the trap back out and I'll pound in where those two levers are. Then I'll take the trap and it'll set perfectly in that square cutout, and the levers will fall into where I just pounded it out. No wobble at all. If there is any wobble, I just take my hammer and I pinch the trap. I just pound the ground and basically take the ground and the earth and pinch the trap in place. Once I started doing that, I have had zero problems bedding traps at all. So again, I plan to make a video really going in depth about that, because it changed it. I hate the word, or I hate the phrase, you know, game changer or change the game, but it did for me. So bedding in frozen ground is a tough one. I didn't really struggle with that this year because I was trapping before we got the freezing weather, so most of my trap beds were already cut out and made. I recommend just getting a real heavy hammer, or even like a pickaxe, and using the pickaxe to kind of chop away at the ground. You'll have to be a little more strategic with your bedding in frozen ground, because you can't really sink it into the mud when everything's, you know, rock solid. But in that scenario, I will cut a bigger bed and I'll fill it with a ton of peat moss, so I can kind of manipulate the peat moss how I want it instead of the ground. How much is too much backing on a set? So this person is talking about, you know, like a dirt hole set, or like, you know, even a flat set or a post set. I don't like anything super flashy. I think a lot of people overthink it with like the guiding and all that stuff. I'll just cut my dirt hole out, and then all the dirt that I use to dig out the trap bed, I'll just put behind the dirt hole. If you think about it, it's actually kind of backwards, and I've never heard anybody talk about this, but you know, guys will cut or punch their dirt hole, and then they'll dig out the front where they put the trap, and then they'll take, just like I'm talking about, they'll take the dirt and put it behind the dirt hole. If you think about like a real scenario, when a coyote's digging out that hole, all the dirt would be basically where the trap is, if that makes sense. We don't ever do that, because then they wouldn't be able to step down onto the trap if we had a big mound of dirt. But it is kind of backwards to how it's actually like how an actual coyote or dog would dig. But yeah, I'll just take that dirt and just put it around the back of the hole. Sometimes I'll even take just like a rock big enough that they won't like paw at it and pull it over the trap, but I'll set that behind the dirt hole, just basically trying to prevent them from coming around the backside. I also though try to always look ahead at the wind direction, or at least stick with the prevailing wind in that area, and try to face it in a direction where a coyote would want to circle downwind anyway and then hit the trap. So I think as long as you're not overdoing it, you can't really screw up the backing. But again, I don't like anything super flashy or super crazy. I'll just mound up a little bit of dirt or a rock and call it good. What to look for when getting permission on a new property. So I assume they're asking, once you already have permission, what I'm looking for. So I will always get on X and check out the aerial view, just looking for pinch points, funnels, a lot of similar stuff to deer scouting. These creatures are creatures of edge. They like the path of least resistance, and there's certain terrain features that'll funnel them down. So I'll look for tree lines and look to see if there's a gap in those tree lines. I love waterways or ditches that run through fields. They'll run those like highways. Any sort of like burn pile or big brush pile I like, because mice and rabbits and stuff live in those. Crop changes I love. If there's a big field and you have half of it in beans and half of it in cut corn, like I said, they'll run those edges. And then everything I look at on the map, I'll either prove or disprove once I get the boots on the ground. And I'm looking for tracks, I'm looking for scat, I'm looking for, I just the other day found a real dirt hole from a real coyote, like in the wild, obviously. A coyote made a dirt hole. What we simulate with our traps, this was a real one. I'll look for stuff like that. But scat and tracks are the big one. If you have an area that's hammered in tracks, especially if we like just got a rain and they're fresh, just put that trap right there. I mean, put it smack dab in front of where it looks like they're running, and you'll catch them eventually. Where do you set in proximity to sign, logging road, intersections, etc.? So I think I kind of already answered that too, but again, I'll put it basically right in front of where they're going. I think a lot of people think like the bait and the lure is drawing these things in from like hundreds of yards away. That is not the case. I mean, I've had them certain times a year walk right past them, and if the wind switched, they didn't even catch it. So if you have a pinch point or a trail or a logging road and there's tracks on it or scat on it, I'm putting that trap right there, like in their face. I want them to basically be traveling and oops, run into it. Like, oh my gosh, what's this? What's going on here? So again, I'll get right in front of them if I can. So I do try to avoid setting really close to timber, definitely in timber, because it seems like you end up catching, at least in this area, a lot of non-targets, a lot of coons, a lot of possums, and that's fine. If I catch a coon or a possum during the season, I'll shoot them. I don't want them around either for the sake of turkey hunting and things like that. But I'm trying to catch coyotes, so I would prefer to not have my traps plugged up with coons and possums, because if a coon comes by at midnight and you catch him, and then a coyote comes by at 3, you're not going to catch the coyote because there's already a coon in there. So again, out in fields, I don't run into as many non-target catches, so I will try to stay away from being in the timber. But that's pretty much it. I appreciate all the questions coming in. I absolutely love trapping. I'm ate up with it. It's so fascinating to me, and the reward is unlike any other outdoor pursuit I've ever taken part of. Hunting, fishing, anything like that. There's a lot of work. They're smart critters. There's a lot to figure out. Once you do figure it out, like I said, the success is super sweet because of how hard it was and how much you had to put into it. So if you have any other questions, shoot them my way. As I mentioned at the beginning, I am by no means an expert at this. I like to think I know what I'm doing, but there are a lot of guys out there that have a lot more experience than me and know a lot more. So I'm just offering my advice and some of the things that I've learned. I went from spending an entire season not catching a single coyote to now I catch them pretty consistent. So if you find yourself dabbling in this and you're really struggling, I promise I've been there, and I'd be happy to offer any advice or any insight that I can. So I appreciate, like I said, the questions that came in. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. We'll have some other trapping videos and stuff coming out in the future. So if you're into that stuff, we'd appreciate if you liked and subscribed, and then you'll be the first one to see it anyway. So thank you guys, and we'll see you on the next video.